Human beings have always had a need to communicate. Before we invented words, we just screamed at each other until someone figured out what we wanted or we died. Which, disturbingly, is not that different from how Twitter works today. But eventually, we decided to write things down, creating a permanent record of our thoughts, which, as it turns out, created an archive of human embarrassment, because now people can bring up stuff you said 10 years ago. But what do we actually mean when we talk about writing? It is a sensory process. We use our hands to make marks on a medium. We use our eyes to interpret those marks. This documentary asks a key question: how do changing writing technologies reshape not only communication, but also our senses, our social systems, and the way we think? Join me as I copy and paste through time, literally. The budget for visual effects is surprisingly low, to explore how we went from doodling on rocks to shouting at our phones. We often assume the sensory experiences of writing stays the same, but does it really? Let's find out. And as we move through history, keep one thing in mind: each new technology does not simply replace the previous one, it reorganizes power, accessibility, and the very ways our bodies interact with media. I'm here in the pre-literate era. Back at the dawn of time, humans used to update their status by smearing crushed berries onto damp cave walls. It functioned as an early form of social communication, long before platforms and profiles. You couldn't like a post, you could just grunt approvingly at one. These drawings told stories. Usually there were stories about hunting animals and trying not to die while doing so. They took hours to paint, which feels very inefficient. If they'd invented the post-it note earlier, someone could just have written "bison good, yum yum," and saved everyone a lot of arm trouble. But they didn't have paper yet, or pens for that matter. In reality, cave art wasn't just primitive doodling. It served social, ritual, and symbolic purposes. These images helped communities remember, teach, and pass along cultural knowledge at a time when formal writing systems did not exist. So even here, before writing officially began, visual storytelling was already organizing society and shaping how people understood their world. Behold, the Sumerians invented the world's first writing system, cuneiform, which roughly translates to pointy shapes, because apparently graphic design has always been a thing. Instead of paper, they wrote on clay tablets. This particular tablet might look like something you would buy from a museum gift shop, but is actually a receipt for goats. Imagine carrying a pocket full of these around. This physical burden reminds us that writing was once heavy, literally. If you dropped your shopping list, it wouldn't just get lost, it would shatter. This is also where writing becomes power. These tablets managed trade, taxes, property, and labor. Basically, the foundations of organized society. Writing wasn't just about communication anymore. It became administration, authority, and control. This giant black edifice is the Stele of Hammurabi. King Hammurabi discovered that if you carve rules onto a massive rock, people feel morally obligated to obey them. It contains 282 laws, many involving extremely dramatic punishments: hands cut off, eyes poked out, so not exactly a gentle reminder system. It anticipates modern terms and conditions culture. According to media theorist Harold Innis, one of the academic boffins of our tale, Stone carving is what we might call a time-based medium. It lasts a long time. You can't fold it, travel with it, or casually stick it in your bag. As a result, it supports stability, tradition, and continuity. It literally locks society into long-term rules. It is argued that every communication medium biases society in some direction. Some media encourage durability and tradition, while others support expansion and movement. The critical point here is this: the medium is never neutral. This is why media history is never just about tools, it is about power. Much later, when lighter materials like papyrus and paper emerged, media would shift towards what we might call space-based communication. More portable, more spreadable, better for administration, debate, and change. It does not just transmit information, it shapes what kinds of society are even possible. While the Sumerians were busy playing with clay tablets, the Egyptians decided to level up aesthetically and invented hieroglyphs, which is basically ancient Egyptian for really fancy emojis. Look at this: bird, eye, squiggly line, mysterious dude walking sideways like he's in a fashion show. It feels strangely familiar. If you sent this combination to millennial, they would probably understand it as, "I'm ghosting you," respectfully. The Egyptians didn't carve absolutely everything into stone. They also wrote on papyrus, a lightweight writing surface made from reeds. It was portable, flexible, and perfect for administration, storytelling, and recording everything from love poems to tax records. The downside? It was fragile and flammable. A reminder that media durability directly shapes cultural memory, which is why we no longer have the Library of Alexandria. So why did papyrus exist in the first place? Media theorist Raymond Williams would argue that papyrus developed because Egyptian society needed a lighter, cheaper, mass-producible medium to manage its increasingly complex bureaucracy, trade, networks, governance, etc. In other words, social need drives media innovation. From this perspective, media technologies are not inevitable, they emerge in response to social and economic needs. Writing was getting ridiculous. Too many pictures, too many symbols. So the Phoenicians, notably pragmatic traders, simplified everything and invented the alphabet. Instead of pictures, they used sounds. They realized you didn't need a picture of a bull to say bull, you just needed a sound, like boo. This was revolutionary. Writing became faster, lighter, and suddenly you could write any word, even ones that had not been invented yet. By reducing writing to sound and abstract symbols, the alphabet made literacy easier to spread. And this was not just a technical shift, but a cognitive one, reshaping how people processed language, memory, and thought. Let's jump ahead to the Middle Ages, what I will call the bird torture era. To write a book, you first had to chase a goose, yank out a feather, and congratulations, you now owned a quill. You dipped it in ink every few seconds, prayed it didn't splatter, and if you made a mistake, there was no backspace, you scraped the page with a knife and hoped that God wasn't watching. A single monk might spend an entire year copying one book. And most of the time, that book was just another reminder about how great God is. Talk about a slow news cycle. The quill illustrates an apparent contradiction in our understanding of media. The quill made writing smoother and more effortless compared to earlier tools. Voltaire and Grusin would call this immediacy. The technology made the sensory experience so comfortable that you hardly even noticed that the quill was there. At the same time, the quill was flexible enough to produce medieval manuscripts with decorative lettering and dramatic flourishes. That is hypermediacy, the medium proudly showing off. This tension between transparency and display still exists in digital media today. Medieval writing both hid and displayed its technology, making sacred knowledge not just something you read, but something you could see, touch, and emotionally feel. Technologies do not simply replace the old ones, they remediate them, reshaping how experience and meaning are produced. Then a man named Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, basically the internet of its time, made of wood. Suddenly, text could be mass-produced. Now, before this, books were reserved for rich people who could afford to hire a monk, a goose, and several years of patience. Gutenberg changed the game by putting letters onto little metal blocks and pressing them onto paper. Suddenly, you could print hundreds of identical books, or pamphlets, or in time, even newspapers. Nothing quite beats reading the daily newspaper. You can access information, and when you're done, you can throw it away. As Harold Innis would say, this is a space-based medium, lightweight, portable, and great for spreading information quickly across distances, but not meant to last forever. Meanwhile, Marshall McLuhan argued that print reshaped human perception. Reading transports you to other places and other times without leaving your chair. But it also trains you to think in straight lines, left to right, sentence by sentence. McLuhan also claimed that the act of reading is like an extension of the eye. When you read, your brain so focuses on those optical sensations, it kind of numbs your other senses.
Can you take the trash out? Hey, did you hear me?
Huh? Nothing wrong with my sense of hearing. McLuhan's point is not just poetic. Print literally reprogrammed how people perceived the world and how societies organized knowledge. With Gutenberg, media stopped being slow, sacred, and elite, and started becoming fast, reproducible, and public. That one shift changed everything. Jump forward a few centuries, and we have the typewriter. It's like a piano, but instead of music, it produces bureaucracy. It is very loud, like a skeleton breakdancing in a biscuit tin. But it let people write faster and more consistently than ever before, which meant paperwork could multiply at terrifying speed. Offices expanded, administration exploded, and suddenly writing became an industrial activity. And then there's the QWERTY keyboard. Originally arranged to reduce mechanical jams, here we are, still using it on phones and laptops that have never ever seen a jam. Proof that once a system gets locked in, changing it becomes harder than fixing the technology itself. Writing tools didn't just speed up communication, they reshaped work. They reorganized labor, gender roles, and class structures. In the 1980s, writing went digital with the word processor. For the first time, words were no longer solid marks. They were ghosts of electricity floating inside a glowing box. You could write a sentence and then delete it, gone. No scratching out, no ink stains, just instant erasure, like nothing had ever happened. With digital writing, the page stopped being a physical surface and became a screen. Writing turned less tactile and more visual, less permanent and more editable. Our senses, habits, and expectations around writing began to radically shift. As we hurtle through time, it can feel like we're racing either towards a shiny utopia or the bitter regrets of Arnie and his army of Terminators. Some people call this concept technological determinism, the belief that technology irresistibly drives human history forward. McLuhan saw things differently. He was more interested in the tug of war between human invention and societal transformation. He reckoned that change was cyclical and reversible. Take the keyboard as an example. We built these beautiful, full-sized QWERTY layouts and then invented tiny mobile phones where your thumbs needed a gym membership. To type C, you had to press the number 2 3 times. This was called multi-tap, and it was painfully slow. But everyone accepted it because new automatically means good, apparently. And then along came T9, which tried to predict your sentence. You would type love and hugs, and it would confidently offer lost any hogs, which is only useful if you're a pig farmer. These days, we have the virtual keyboard. It's a keyboard that isn't physically there. You just tap on the glass and hope for the best. We literally have the entire human knowledge in our pockets. But most of the time, we just type LOL, or we send cat videos. The physical sensation of writing has gone. And all of this forces us to confront a key question. Do technologies shape us, or do we shape them? The answer is not a simple march towards progress or disaster. It is a constant negotiation. Humans adapting to technology, while technology adapts to human life. And now we've reached the grand finale of writing technology, speech recognition. We stop carving, stop writing, and return to yelling at things. Hey Siri, write me a poem on the history of communications that mentions Gutenberg, McLuhan, and the global village. Make it sound like I actually studied. Oh. From ancient fires and stories carved in clay, to ink on scrolls that carried words away, Gutenberg's press set restless thoughts in flight, unleashing books like stars into the night. Wires hummed and screens began to shape our age. McLuhan read the medium as the message on the page. Now networks bind the world in shared exchange, a global village vast, yet strangely close in range. Wow, I might actually win an award for plagiarism. Voice recognition and AI return us to orality. But now everything is filtered through corporations, algorithms, and glitches. We speak, machines interpret, and authorship gets blurry. We've gone from Hammurabi carving eternal laws in stone to screaming at a tiny glass box that keeps auto-correcting McLuhan to McChicken. So that is the journey. From scratching marks on cave walls to shouting at AI. From stone to screens, every medium promised improvement, and yes, we gained speed and access, but we also lost touch, the reflective pause, and bodily engagement. Each medium reshapes power, perception, and what it means to be human. Each medium gives us something while quietly taking something else away. The real question is not whether the future of writing is good or bad, but how we choose to live with these technologies and who we become while using